Stick around if you want to hear more about DXP. So next up, just a quick reminder, if you want to ask questions, open the app, go and find the section that is called Ask the Speakers. Go and click it, type out your message, and we'll get back to you after Thomas's talk. So next up, we have Thomas Eldblom and the role of the CMS in the modern composable DXP. So let's give a big warm welcome to Thomas, please.
Thank you. Oh, do I have a clicker? Someone ran off with a clicker. Oh, cheers. Is the mayor here? No? Okay, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for joining my talk. So, as the introduction said, this is about the role of the CMS in the modern composable DXP. I've slightly, if you're in doubt, this is the business track. So if you want to see code, if you want to see technologies, this is not the place to be. Obviously, CMS, technology, all that, but you're going to wait a while to get to the technology stuff. We're going to start with the business because business matters, and that's the purpose of, that's really the broader topic of my talk today, is that business matters. Composable DXP is about business-centric approach. So we're going to go through two things today. First of all, we're going to talk a little about how to design a modern digital platform. And for that purpose, we're going to talk about Vault. Get back to that. Second thing is the role of technology in a modern DXP. And for that, we're going to talk about a topic that's been touched a number of times today already, the number 932. We'll get back to that as well. So, my name is Thomas Elblom. I'm the CTO and a partner at Pentia. We're an agency developing Umbraco solutions for a number of customers in Denmark and Scandinavia. Over the last 30 years, I've worked as a developer, as an architect, as a consultant for tons of companies now. The last 20 years, I've been employed at Pentia, and I was part of, in the beginning of Pentia, I was part of a small team that developed a CMS, like we all did 20 years ago. That CMS grew to become a big brand, which is Sitecore. I was employed at Sitecore for 4 years. And I worked in product marketing, I worked in product management, I was a developer evangelist, and all that sort of thing. Now, the history of Pentia is really linked to the development of digital platforms. Because we all know, you probably all know Sitecore, which is, in the minds of many, it's the mother of all monoliths now, right? It has everything. You can do everything with it. You can do marketing automation, you can do the analytics, you can do everything with Sitecore, which is really what we're all shunning now, is don't do the monolithic approach. So obviously the whole development of digital platforms has gone through this phase of everything has to go into a suite or a monolith. And now we're suddenly going to the opposite pole, which is everything has to be split up, everything has to be composable. And that's also the story of Pentia. So we built platforms, and we built Sitecore, and we built tons of solutions on top of Sitecore. Now we switched to Umbraco. So why do we do that? Well, it's part of that composable shift. It's not that Sitecore is a bad CMS in any way, but you pay a price for it. And the point of Umbraco in a CMS, and I'll get back to that, is content management. And Umbraco is a great content management system. So if we look at some of the solutions that we built, this is Codan, this is an insurance company, one of the bigger insurance companies in Denmark. They have a number of different business objectives with their digital platform, and they use a number of different technologies to achieve that, one of them being Umbraco. Another one is the Association of Dentists, which has, of course, a completely different set of business objectives, but still have some technologies in common, and they have other technologies that fits their purpose better. So, and the third example I have is Stolwatch, which is a metal analysis company. They build machines that analyze metals for airplanes and those kind of things. So now, as you've probably noticed, you see that there's an Umbraco and a Sycor in there. So they have a DXP that actually has 2 CMSs. And we'll get back to that as well, because why not? It's composable. You can compose it of whatever. I would argue what Paul mentioned a couple of times. There's no such thing as a core system in a composable architecture. For me, it's about business objectives. So first of all, how to design a modern digital platform? Well, Gartner has been mentioned a few times already today. In 2020, they talked about the future of business being composable. So it's not about technology, it's not about platform, it's about the composable business. So this is about composable thinking. This is about a modern business being able to compose itself out of more than just its core business. You have to be able to do other business processes which is not related in any way to your own business. And to build an organization, to architect your business, to have independent teams that does something that has absolutely nothing with your core business. I mean, we all know it. We have a marketing department. The marketing department might not know anything about how the product works. They don't build the product, they market the product. So those kind of things. But those are monolithic, typically monolithic businesses. You have, you know, the marketing division being next to in the office next to the other business, and there's the marketing guy who's also a product expert, so it's kind of ingrained. And Gartner mentions the third thing being composable technologies, the fact that the different business entities needs to be using technologies and platforms that are integrated so that you can compose your entire business with systems that talk together. Volt is a good example of a composable element to a business. If you think of a restaurant's core business is cooking, right? It's cooking great food for all of us. It might also be, you know, great service. You can go into the restaurant, you can get a good service, and so the waiters are employed, the chef is employed, all that stuff. Whereas 2 years ago, COVID happened. Suddenly, you couldn't go into the restaurant. You suddenly had to order takeaway. Now, takeaway, you would have to hire drivers. You'd have to build a website. That's not part of any restaurant's core business. So having to build a development team to build a website, having to build a task of delivery drivers. And that's where Volt is a good example, because what they did was deliver as a service. Delivery as a service. You could just, you know, sign up with them, monthly fee, and then have them deliver, have them drive the website. So it's a good example of composable business. You bolt on other business elements to your business to drive more growth or customer experience or whatever. So we're definitely seeing a shift. At Pentia, we've seen a shift in mindset over the last many years, from the kind of inside out to being more customer-centric to being outside in, understanding the customer journey, focusing on the customer and their needs across different business entities. So whether you're buying the product, whether you're in customer support, you need one kind of common customer journey. Likewise, we're also seeing a shift in IT mindset to be, as you all know, that's why we're here today, and that's why you're listening to me, from the monolithic to the composable, from the focus on either we buy a platform that's super good for internal processes and might be shitty on the customer experience, or it's a great customer experience and it's kind of, you know, shit on the process side. Now we can have both. We can suddenly buy different platforms that both have our internal stakeholders and external stakeholders in mind. Now, we also see a shift where we used to have one IT department. That IT department had one set of compliance rules. You had to set up your network like this. You had to set up your security like this. In a modern approach, you have to have multiple sets. You have to have something running in the cloud, something in an internal. There must be a high-speed process for some systems where you can really rapidly deploy, and others maybe a more low speed. So that's a shift that we've seen at Pentia. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, but So let's talk a little about going from the business side of things then over to the digital platform, because that's, I think, also where some of the confusion around the word DXP happens. So for me, any platform that you build is around business objectives. What is the purpose of that platform? And under any platform is always some processes. There's always some internal stakeholders that needs to do something, edit the content, capture, nurture the leads, something like that. And then you've got the systems to run that in your CRM system, your ERP system. Now, the digital platform fits in between that. You think about what target audiences, what experiences do you want to drive? What are the digital systems that you need to run the experiences onto those audiences? And what are the processes that are purely digital? And that's what we call the DXP, the Digital Experience Platform. We used to call it the CMS, which I'm really, really trying hard for every customer and every employee at Pentia to stop calling it the CMS solution, stop calling it the Umbraco solution, because it's really a broader thing. You'll see that later as well. Now, obviously, what we put into the DXP is very much reliant on what the business objectives are. So let's say you're running a marketing platform, and then obviously the objectives would be something around brand awareness or lead generation. If you're running a customer service platform, it would be something like churn reduction or things like that. So the objectives are different depending on your business objectives. The systems would be different. So to avoid the idea, the notion of the monolith and that, we'll have to break down our platform into pieces, and that's where are you getting sick of the hexagons by now? I think we need to find another thing, but the hexagons are there, and that's because we want to break down the monolith into something that is smaller, right? And yeah, I think it's taken from microservice architecture and things like that. But, and that's where from our perspective, what is important in a composable architecture is not the technologies. Every time I see these diagrams with a technology name on it, sorry, Paul, I kind of cringe a little, because that's not, for me, is not the purpose of the composable architecture. Composable architecture is about breaking down into business objectives, because we have a number of different business objectives and different business processes. Just like restaurants had delivery as a separate process, and they could do as a service on that. So if we have a service platform, for example, we could have service optimization. That's a business objective. To do optimization of a service, we might have FAQs or information where people can find the service themselves, find out how to solve their own problems. We might also have a chat system or a customer dialogue that allows people to interact with your business. So those are two different business objectives or business processes that are related to a business objective. If we do process optimization, then it's about taking a customer case in and optimizing that, managing the service case, the service request. You might also do things like putting the customer information out onto your portal so that customers can see their own customer information. They might be able to update their own information themselves. That's optimizing processes instead of having to call your call center and saying, my telephone number is wrong. Churn reduction, maybe it's about putting out new offers to existing customers, putting out products and campaigns not just on your website, but also on your service portal. So that's a different business process and a different business objective. And of course, we've got the front ends. So in a DXP, it's not about having a website. We have a number of different, we might have an app, we might have sorry, the microphone is, we might have emails pushing out on certain times through the platform. We might have apps and of course the web portal. So different channels supporting the business processes and supporting the business objectives. And then of course we've got all the craft underneath, which is like analytics. We've got DevOps, where we develop and release the products. We have sysops where we maintain the infrastructure and all that stuff, even though, of course, cloud is completely without infrastructure. There's always infrastructure. So what we do at Pentia is and luckily that's not the hexagons, we talk about this as logical architecture. We work with our customers in describing these hexagons, but use them as a reference point for implementation. So every time we start a project, we try to design these hexagons and then talk about who's the stakeholder owner here. Who owns this business project? Who decides what the customer dialogue system, what technology it is, how it's designed, what's the purpose, how do we need to train the customer service representatives, all that stuff for each of those elements. And that becomes quite an important piece of reference documentation for the business and for the developers, because they can see, well, now they're working on this hexagon, now they're working on this hexagon. And it's no longer a monolith. Now it's no longer go into our Umbraco solution and fix this. And of course, it has nothing to do with Umbraco because it's about the chat and that's a different system, but the customer still refers to it as the Umbraco solution because someone said that in the beginning. So let's move on to technology. Now we're getting to it, right? As I said, the CMS has been the reference point for us and for many of our customers for many, many years. It's always been like, can you get us a new CMS solution? And we ask them, what are you using it for? Well, it's for customer service, it's for this, we need a website, we also need to run an app, so maybe it's not really a CMS, maybe it's something else. So there's been a transition from that notion of the CMS being the central thing over to the CMS, the technology of the CMS to be less important, but still super important. There's no DXP that I've implemented over the last couple of years, Composable, that hasn't had a CMS. The CMS is always there, but it's no longer the central part. And the composable future looks really, really bright. It's becoming more and more simple to do these things. This is, of course, what's also driving the development towards composability, is that it's super easy to run through your credit card. You've got a new system running. It has an API. All you have to do is wire it up. Even if Umbraco then has the integration pre-built, it becomes even more simple. Whereas in old days, if you had to do a composable architecture, you'd have to spin up a multitude of infrastructure, do your integrations yourself, all that stuff. You could do it, but it would be more costly. Today it's cheaper, it's more effective. And that's where, of course, this one, which you've already seen a couple of times today, comes in, and the number 9,932, which is the evolution from 150 systems when Scott Brinker started to now over 9,000 systems. And there's a system out there for you that does whatever you want, and it does it at your price point for the organization that you have. Because as Philip said, this is not about technology, this is about people. Each of these hexagons has some people associated with them. And that's really what you should be focusing on, the governance, the organization inside your company. So lots and lots of systems. Now, if we then dive into the technologies behind these hexagons, because as I said, we prefer not to have technologies on this, because then it starts to become a technology-specific platform, and that's what we want to get away from. But there still is, of course. Obviously, the as-a-service concept is out there, and it's really something that you have to explore for each of these business objectives. Is there a platform that does it for you? Do you really need to build a marketing automation solution? No, not at all. All the marketing automation solutions that I know of runs in the cloud, and because it's the infrastructure cost of sending out emails in thousands is horrendous, so you have to buy it in the cloud. But there's tons of others like search, and you all know this, analytics, all those kind of things is out there, and it's easy to plug in. And the other point is that integration-wise, standards are coming in a lot more areas. Like I remember over the last 5-10 years how many, or I guess 5 years ago, we constantly built login services. We built, username, password, user databases, all those kind of things. We're never building that anymore. It's all OAuth, it's all single sign-on services. You just plug in whatever service they have and use that because it's a standard. Everybody applies to it. So the whole login hexagon just becomes a software as a service. And orchestration, the systems that weave the integrations together, whether it's orchestration through the editor experience in Umbraco or it's orchestration through across systems and things like Uniform, becomes increasingly important, obviously, because there is no business in a DXP without integration, as Philip also mentioned. Another technology point that I want to make is that a DXP does not necessarily just have one front end. It has as many front end as it needs. You can have one website, you can have 20 websites. The important thing is here, who's the owners? What's the business purpose of that website? Is it a multi-site that you're developing because it's one owner that needs to run multiple campaigns? Or is it a customer portal and a marketing site? And the customer portal is the service department, and the campaign site is the marketing department. So have two hexagons, and think about, do you want to build them on the same technology, in the same tech stack, or do you want to run them in separate systems and build them with maybe the same team, but in two different paces, or two different teams? It's open to you as architects to decide what fits the business best, not your developer team. Everybody prefers to have just one code base. We all love monoliths because you only have to open one Visual Studio project, but that's just counterproductive. So the last one is obviously the CMS, which is in this context quite important. But as I said, there's not necessarily a core CMS in the system. Now we have two Danish customers that are both public sector. And we've helped them build and advise them on how to structure their content system. And we have a bunch of editors that are managing web pages, and they're managing theme sites and those kind of things. And they're working in the WYSIWYG editor to put pages together. And another group of editors in the same system that are working with heavily structured content, workflows, compliance, those kind of things. Sadly, in both those cases, neither the web editors or the structured content editors are happy. They think it's a crappy experience. And our experience, of course, well, it's based on history, so it's maybe 10 years ago we built this. Today, I would never say the same CMS to them. I would always look at those as two different business objectives and choose the right solution, choose the right technology which fits structured content and page composition. So again, think a CMS is no longer just a web CMS or a monolith of every content in the book. It's something that fits with your content needs. So maybe PIM systems or DAM systems have an equal right to the Umbracos and the CMS, the web CMSs, because it's content. Luckily, just as Paul mentioned, I was also super psyched about the announcement this morning that's in the vision for Umbraco. It's all about editing experience, staying true to what Umbraco is best at. And that's I'm sure we're going to continue to build tons of solutions on Umbraco because that's what Umbraco is really, really good at, is CMS, nothing else. Trust me, I've been on the other side and see features being built into whatever. And that's why I think Umbraco's plan now is with the cloud and all that stuff is great because it allows us to. I don't want to spin up infrastructure to run Umbraco. I just want Umbraco to run it. I just want to call an API and suddenly you have an Umbraco running. And I don't want to have an Umbraco that does everything. I just want an Umbraco to be the best CMS in the book. So. Thank you for listening. With those words, I will do the speaker talk in, what was that? In 25 minutes. But otherwise, just keep in touch. Ping me on LinkedIn or throw me an email if you want to reach out. Thank you.
So.